or is he here?
Hey, Jen.
Oh, no worries. I thought I saw one extra. Maybe it was, oh, there's Pete. Perfect. All right. Do we have everyone?
Where are you tonight, Pete?
We've got everyone. All right. So
Hey, Marty.
I am going to call this work session to order at 5 p.m. Please join me for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance
With allegiance to the flag
of the United States of
America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
And as this is an informal work session, I will be conducting roll call here. I'm just going to do a visual roll call and make sure that we have all commissioners present. All present. Do not have any announcements this evening. Brings us to public comment. I have one written comment that I will be reading. As again, this is an informal work session, so we don't have the city clerk here tonight. And then we'll see if we have anyone on Zoom to do some public comments. But I've got one written comment here from Emily Leach. And it says, Commissioners, my name is Emily Leach, 1424 Garfield Ave. Thank you for your efforts thus far in slowing the spread of COVID-19 in our community. With the newest directive from Governor Whitmer opening up the UP's restaurants, bars, retail, and offices at limited capacity, I encourage you to note the very important piece of the directive that gives the local units of government the power to set certain limitations as to how to choose to re-engage in social and physical interactions. I believe this is an opportunity to create a new normal that also reduces our collective carbon footprint and balances public health, mobility, and a healthy economy. As Marquette begins to reopen and welcome visitors for the warm summer and fall months, I suggest continuing to work closely with the DDA and economic development groups to set out guidelines for our businesses and encourage physical distancing that will promote handicap accessible, walkable, and bikeable retail stores, storefronts, and restaurants. My vision for Marquette Rising out of the stay-home order consists of more outside seating for restaurants and more outdoor retail options. Thank you for already reducing barriers to do just that. This all takes up space, so I am recommending removing areas on 3rd Street and or Washington Street that have curbside parking or designate a block that closes access to motor vehicles to enable adequate physical distancing and improved safety for people in transit, as well as people enjoying meals or shopping. The block of Washington Street between Front Street and 3rd Street stands out as a viable option for this, as there is access from the north and south through stairwells to parking lots. Hand washing stations installed throughout downtown would be a great addition as well. Thank you for the opportunity to comment, Emily Leach. Again, that was public comment from Emily Leach. And do we have anyone on Zoom to comment? Okay. We've got 4 individuals on Zoom to comment. The first one is Ann White, so we're going to get her patched in now. I'm not seeing her in just yet. There she is. Ann, are you able to hear us?
She does not have her audio or video.
Okay. Miss Ann White, if you could turn on either your video and or audio. We're not able to hear you at this point, and it's the opportunity for public comment. Yeah, we'll try someone else and come back to Ann in a moment if we can get her on.
Gail.
And we have Gail Hamlin, you said? Hannah. Gail Hannah. And Gail Hannah, are you able to hear us? You would need to enable the audio. Oh, I see audio popping up. Are you able to hear us, Gail? Oh, it's now on mute. Oh, there we go. Okay, go ahead. You have 3 minutes for public comment.
I don't have anything to say. I just was coming to listen.
Oh, got it. You're welcome to listen on Zoom or on YouTube. Oh, you have to listen on YouTube. Zoom is only for participating. Sorry about that.
Well,
but if you go on YouTube.
I told Jen I would listen in case you wanted any comment, but never mind.
Okay, that's fine. If you feel like you might want to comment, you can stay on. Anyone else?
Melissa Sprouse.
And we have Melissa Sprouse. And Melissa, I see you on here. Go ahead and unmute your microphone before you begin to speak. And you'll have 3 minutes whenever you start talking.
Okay, how's that?
Yep.
Okay. I won't take up as much of your time as I did yesterday. I just wanted to say that I appreciate being given the chance to give my comments at the meeting yesterday. And today I had a chance to review some of my financial projections. We're just looking at the next 3 months. We can't even think about what the next year or further might hold. And I know that I'm not alone. None of us know if we're going to be at 75, 50%, 25% of last year's sales. And it's kind of scary. So I know that we went into business knowing that it was going to be a risk, but I don't think any of us are prepared for this. And I know that, like us, you are all doing the best you can to support us. And I really sincerely appreciate the steps that you and the DDA have taken so far to give us that support. And I'm just reaching out again to tell you that I hope that you will all explore potential solutions, creative out-of-the-box solutions, and don't hesitate to reach out to us, business owners, so that we can help you help us keep going. And that's all I have.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks.
Jen Ray.
Okay, we've got Jen Ray. Make sure we can get her connected here. Jen, do you have any comments?
Hello.
We're able to hear you. Go ahead whenever you're ready.
I'm here for the meeting for the, do I need to say who I am, or what are you waiting for from me? Sorry, Jenna.
That's all right. This is public comment. So are you hoping to make a public comment at this time?
Nope, I'm just here to listen.
Okay. All right. Thanks, Jen. We do need you to listen on YouTube. The Zoom is for making public comments only.
Sounds
If
good.
you can switch over to the Media Market YouTube page. Thank you.
And then Ann White is back.
Ann White, we'll try one more time here. And that should conclude public comment after her. Ann, are you able to hear us? I'm not seeing a microphone, so I'm wondering if she doesn't have audio connected.
Yeah.
Seems like we're having some connection issues with Ann White. There is a second public comment period at the conclusion of the meeting, so hopefully we're able to get that figured out in the meantime. All right, that will close public comment for the first public comment session of this meeting. Brings us to our only agenda item of the evening, discussion COVID-19 impact. So this work session is to discuss the City of Marquette's concerns, questions, ideas regarding COVID-19. We've got several folks from the City of Marquette staff here to kind of give us a briefing on things that they're dealing with, and then we've got some excellent community partners willing to share what they've been working on in regards to COVID-19. So I think we're going to do a lot of listening and learning tonight, and then at the end, I intend to kind of go round robin with the commission to ask questions and do discussion. And as I'm thinking of that, I think what I'll do is at the conclusion of each presenter, if anyone has a question that really needs to be asked to that presenter, I'll ask. But if we just have general discussion, if you could just save that till the end. And I'm looking for some head nods from the commission if that makes sense, and if not, say the word and I can help clarify, but I'm seeing head nods. All right, so that's how the way we'll go, and I think we've got City Manager Mike Angeli up first, so I'm gonna hand my computer over to him.
Thank you. I mean, just briefly to get us started, a few weeks ago, I was asked to consider a work session regarding the economic impact of COVID-19. With that in mind, by people to consider presenting, and I want to thank them for being here tonight and introduce them to you in the order that they will be presenting, each representing a little different aspect of the economic areas of the community. The first will be Gary Simpson, who's the finance director for the city, who will touch on the impact to the city and our budget. Then I've asked Jen LePage, our HR staff, or our HR director, to speak to you and just kind of give you a highlights of what this impact has been to our staff and to our personnel. Becky Salmon is here representing the DDA, who I think will give you a much clearer picture of what the DDA is actually doing for the community. Amy Klickner, who represents the Lake Superior Community Partnership on a little broader level, a countywide perspective. And then Marty Patante, who is from Invest UP, who is probably the most knowledgeable that we have access to regarding the Upper Peninsula situation. So we kind of start in the beginning and spread out over the course of the UP to give the commissioners an idea of what is happening and what we're doing to deal with the situation. So thank you. With that, I'll let the mayor introduce Gary as the first speaker.
All right, so our first presentation is by Gary Simpson, our Chief Financial Officer. So Gary, oh, there you are. And we've got a presentation, so I'm wondering, is that going to be? Gary's going to share his screen. Whenever you're ready, Gary, go ahead.
Can everybody see the screen?
We're able to see and hear you, but we're not able to see the screen just yet.
Yeah.
I think Sean's running over to help you right now.
Okay.
I think you'll need to hit share screen. There's like a little green.
Yeah, I thought I did, so.
Let's see, go back to Zoom, right there. Click here, then share screen.
How's my audio? I just had a note here from Dennis that it was maybe difficult to hear. Are you guys able to hear me okay?
Yep, now your screen sharing.
Okay, thank you.
And then you just want to. Yep.
Okay, are we good?
I think so. Yeah, looks like you're good.
I can't hear anybody. Are we okay?
Oh, I've got them out of order here. Okay. All right, Gary, we've got that up on our screen. Go ahead.
Okay. So, just remember what I'm about to say. There's no good news. Just remember, I'm just the messenger, so please don't shoot me. Since the COVID-19 pandemic really hit us, I've certainly been out there searching, seeing what's happening. I've listened in on countless hours of conference calls, webinars. I've read thousands of pages of stuff, and this is kind of just a brief synopsis of what we're looking at right now. So this is just what we know as of today. And really the major themes are there's just lots of uncertainty. And as you don't have to be a physics major to know, but things can fall fast, but it takes much longer to climb back up. And really the reason the news is bad is basically the state economy has been shut down for 2 months, maybe even a little bit longer. So there's absolutely no good economic news to come out of that. And some of the current projections are it's going to be by the end of year 2022, we'll probably only be at 90% of pre-COVID numbers. So that's just kind of a little eye-opening right there. Before COVID, things were looking great. Things were looking really good. And now we're looking at 2 more years before we're even going to be at 90% to those numbers. Some of what I've been hearing, I've listened in on the state revenue. Well, the way they do their budget, they have a revenue estimating conference that they do in January and May of each year. I listened in on the one they did in May, and this is really what they do to not only take care of next year's budget and shape it, but to also see if they need to do anything to reduce the current year budget. And as you can imagine, all the numbers are pretty dire, but these are some things that, some economists from the University of Michigan were pointing out that so far there's been 3 major federal bills to help, guide everybody through the financial crisis that COVID has caused, and that's the Family First, the CARES Act, and the PPP, which is the Paycheck Protection Program. Now, none of those really directly benefit the city, but they do benefit its citizens, which we're also on the lookout for. Further expectations, they expect the PPP to be extended another 8 weeks. They're saying state and local governments nationwide will need $600 billion of aid through the year 2022. They say unemployment benefits need to be extended through 2021. And they're saying the president is currently working on a payroll tax cut. And I'm not sure where that stands as of today, but I do know that the feds are working on another round of fiscal stimulus, and we'll just have to see what that looks like when it's done. Now, one estimate they threw out, and this is from 2018, I don't have a more current estimate, but they said even in 2018, of everyone who's qualified to file for unemployment, really less than 50% of those people do. Now, I've heard estimates of the current state employment rate to be as high as 30%, but that's only for those people who have filed. So if these numbers have hold true, where less than 50% actually file, then the state's been in a world of hurt as far as unemployment. So as you can imagine, COVID-19 has drastically altered the economic outlook, and we've certainly been in a recession, and some people are even calling it a depression. But what separates this from the 1930s event is that this is due basically to one event, COVID-19. Back in the late 20s and early 30s, they were dealing with quite a few different factors. So maybe this won't be quite as bad as what they're saying, but we just don't know. The University of Michigan folks are saying the state of Michigan got hit harder than the average state, and that's basically because of the state's reliance on the auto industry. And they're also saying the state got hit harder than most other states by the COVID-19 pandemic. Here are some GDP forecasts. GDP, of course, is gross national product, which is a measurement that's used to, is the nation's economy growing? Is it stagnated, or is it declining? And what's interesting here is you see these HFA, SFA, and admin. This is what the state folks are coming up with. And what I found interesting was the House has their own staff, the Senate has their own staff, and the governor's administration has their own staff. And they're all coming up with separate numbers to really try to estimate the same thing. As you can see from the numbers, there's quite a bit of difference sometimes, and I really don't know who has a better track record as to who predicts what the best, but this is what they're projecting, that for 2020, certainly recession level GDP. And what they're saying is, and this is kind of ties into where they were saying, even by the year 2022 will not be fully recovered, but only about 90% recovered. And also the 2020 number, it represents the largest decline since 1946. Now, what I don't know is what was going on in 1946, because I wasn't alive then. But that could also mean that's just when they started measuring all of this. So I'm not real sure, but they are saying this is the worst since 1946. And they use those numbers to come up with projections for the state's government, their overall revenue, and that includes the school aid fund and the state's general fund. And you can see in this bottom column here, combined, you know, it's pretty dire. They're looking at about a $3.1 billion reduction in the current fiscal year, and about another 3.1 billion the next fiscal year, and close to 2 billion in 2022. So the state is going to use these numbers to determine, you know, how they're going to allocate their funding and that kind of thing. So this is what we want to keep an eye on, is, are these numbers good? And if they are good, what the state is going to do about it. And history has shown the state has always come after municipalities fairly hard, and they call it state revenue sharing. When it comes time like this, I always refer to it as state non-sharing, state revenue non-sharing, because the state does tend to take care of itself first and then let the municipalities deal with it however they can. So, as I said, about a $3.2 billion deficit projected for FY20, $3.1 billion for 21. Just since COVID-19, the state sales tax collections are down 50%. State gas tax collections are down 60%. What does this mean to the cities? So, like I said, state revenue sharing, that's our biggest concern. There's a non-constitutional portion, and it is very likely to be cut, and it could be cut drastically, as in maybe 100% of it, which is about $380,000, excuse me, per year to the city. There's also a constitutional portion, which the state doesn't have any choice. They have to share it with us. But because of the previous slide where you saw sales tax collections were down 50%, that's going to be less money to be put in the pot to share. And also, I think our biggest impact will be lost revenue, and I'll get a little bit more into that later. And really, it all just depends on how long the pandemic lasts and how quickly everyone gets out to travel and buy stuff will be the key components as to really how severe everything is to the city. Now, as mentioned, lost revenue for the city itself is probably the biggest impact, and currently estimating it could be as high as $1 million. And the areas most likely to be impacted are Tourist Park, the marinas, Lakeview Arena, other parks and rec activities. We'll probably see reduced water and sewer revenue due to lower billable flows. And as we all know, summer events are all being canceled. So that's going to be an impact to the city itself, the city government, but also to the local businesses, because they won't be seeing the inflow of people that they normally see. So things that we don't know, pretty much everything. Some questions that are really concerning: will there be a second wave? Right now I'm hearing nobody is really thinking there will be, but nobody knows for sure. The state is delaying its budget process as much as possible. In fact, the state took the unprecedented tact of ordering a third revenue estimating conference, and that should be late August or early September. And they're doing that because the numbers are really, really bad, and they didn't want to act based on the numbers presented to them just a week or so ago. So they're going to give it another shot in late August and early September. And that's when we'll know for sure. Now, the problem is for us is we're already going to have our budget pretty much set in motion, and we'll just have to kind of keep an eye on it and, you know, deal with it as we can. And really, that's all I had. If you have any questions, I'll be glad to address it. But again, there's really just a lot of uncertainty, and there's a lot of experts looking at everything, but nobody just knows for sure, and we are keeping our eye on things as best we can, and we'll deal with it as it happens.
Thank you, Gary. Are you guys able to hear me? Yeah, okay. Just getting mixed signals on my mute or unmute. We're using the phone. Thanks for bearing with me. Gary, appreciate your presentation. I know there's a lot of unknowns. It's going to be tricky as we move forward, but I appreciate you keeping up to date on what we are able to know at this point. Commissioners, do we have any questions, specific questions on this presentation for Gary? I see Commissioner Bonzel. Go ahead.
Madam Mayor, and thank you, Gary, for this really clear presentation. Of course, really concerning news, but I feel I understand things a lot better right now after that. The one question I had was when you mentioned earlier in the presentation that we receive about $380,000 in non-constitutionally mandated revenue sharing from the state, and that could potentially be compromised by state budget issues. Is that $380,000 included in the potential, estimate of $1 million in lost revenue you mentioned later, or would that be in addition to that $1 million in lost revenue?
Good question, and that would be in addition to the $1 million. $1 million I was referring to were those items I listed, mostly tourist park, marinas, water and sewer fund, that kind of a thing. And really that 1 million is sort of a worst case scenario. And I do want to point out that particularly in tourist park, in the marinas, they both now have a little bit of a reserve built up, so that even if the worst case scenario hit, we could hold that off for a year at least. So I'm not really so much concerned there. The bigger concern would be in the water and sewer funds, because as you have seen in previous presentations, we actually have negative reserves. So that would be more the immediate concern. And in the general fund, we wouldn't want to take a $380,000 hit, but we do have sufficient reserves to where we might hold it off for a year. But once we get beyond that, we might have to be looking at some, pretty hard choices we'll have to make in the budget.
Thank you, I appreciate it.
I believe Commissioner Davis, did you have a question?
Actually, it was the same question that Evan just asked, but in addition to the 380 and statutory, the constitutional revenue share, what is that for this year, Gary?
We were looking at close to $1.8 million. They're already telling us it's going to be a little bit less than that. The latest projection I saw was about a $60,000 hit, but we'll know more when they do their third conference in late August.
And we're talking about for next year's budget.
That's for the current year budget. For next year,
yeah.
Even less than what we're collecting this year. I think it'd probably be about a $100,000 hit.
Okay.
It'll be based on what they come up with in late August or September.
Okay, thank you.
Mayor Pro Tem Hill?
Yeah, a couple of clarifying questions. Thank you, and good questions from folks. So the revenue sharing, does that all go into the general fund, or is any of that actually allocated or dedicated to specific things?
We do give $40,000 of it to the library, but other than that, it stays in the general fund.
Okay, and what is the general fund on average? What's the total?
The total general fund budget for the current year is about $20 million.
Okay, and then so we're looking at 1%, 2% loss. Is that what we're?
Yeah, it's probably around 1% is what we're looking at. In fact,
in this current fiscal year.
In the current fiscal year, yes.
Okay. And the really scary numbers come in the next fiscal year.
Yeah, that's when we're, just kind of preparing for the worst kind of a thing. We don't even know what numbers to put in the budget at this point. Like I said, the state isn't going to really release its numbers until our numbers are already put in. So we'll be as conservative as we can going in, and then maybe just adjust once we know the true picture the state's going to do.
So can I ask, and this may be a question for the city manager, but and maybe we discuss this at the end too, that's fine. But why we would go through a budget process when we don't know what the numbers are, and could we move it to September?
We've got city manager here. Maybe he can help answer that.
There we go. I don't know, I think I need Gary's input to answer that question because a lot of it's in the timing. It's the necessity for the public hearings and things of that nature. We have to have it approved to be in effect by October 1st. So in essence, it has to be approved by the last meeting in September at the latest. So it generally takes us August to get through some of the preliminary steps. And I think we push it back probably as far as we can because historically June, July are when a lot of people are on vacation and things of that nature. So we try to do that. Is that correct, Gary?
Yes, Mike, you're exactly right. We do need to have the budget approved by midnight on September 30th. Now that doesn't mean, we have several options because that doesn't mean October 2nd, you can't adjust the budget. So my recommendation is we still go through the budget process as we normally do it, and we'll just give you our best guesses at the time. Then as numbers start to firm up, then we'll, certainly we may have to kind of go through a little bit of a process again to adjust, but we'll need to have some type of budget starting October 1. And that's by law and by charter.
Thank you.
And Gary, when we put our budget together, don't we normally not include the statutory budget sharing? I mean, we kind of budget without that.
We were doing that for a while, but due to We Energies, we had to start budgeting for that. And that's actually what we're using to help build up our reserves to help, hold off the We impact. But when we shut down last year and this year, we had to fully budget for it to make the budget work. The hope is eventually we'll get back to where you don't have to budget for it, but for now, to get the budget to work, we had to include that.
Okay, thank you.
Commissioner Schlegel, go ahead.
Thank you. So hearing you correctly, Gary, to me, it would make sense to go through and do business as normal. Come up with a budget as we see that, we could be happy with, maybe not obviously ask for anything excessive. We haven't been able to do that for a while, have we? But and then tailor it from there. I mean, the unknowns are so gross here that the best thing we can do is go in on a baseline budget proposal as if nothing's wrong.
I would agree with that statement. Now, Mike has mandated to all department heads to keep the budget as lean as possible. So I would be very surprised if we came in with a big fat budget. So we'll present to you a balanced budget based on what we know at the time. And then as we do start to learn new things, then we'll come back to you and say we need to adjust here and there. And it could be good news too. I mean, maybe, the dire predictions don't come true and everything is, good again. And the good part would be to come in and say we have more money to spend. And so it can work either way.
Any other commissioners? All right. Thank you, Gary. Appreciate it. We may have questions for you later when we get into more discussion at the end here, but For now, let's move on to Jen LePage, Director of Human Resources. Thank you for joining us, Jen. Was that presentation?
Good evening. I'm gonna just try to give you a real quick overview of the big picture of what's going on with our personnel. The week of March 9th, we began planning as an administration how we'd best safeguard our staff, facilities, and the public from COVID-19. We developed a tier plan for closing quickly jumped from tier 1 to tier 3, where an emergency was declared per our city policy when the governor's executive order to shelter in place became effective. Departments individually determined what office staff members were able to work remotely and how to best manage any required in-person work. The majority of our critical infrastructure staff were placed on more of a minimum manning schedule. And in the last few weeks, we've implemented staggered schedules back into the offices and working our way back to fully staffed. Our critical infrastructure staff is all back to 100% regular in-person scheduling. And as of June 1st, our administrative staff will be back to 100% as well. We've implemented some flexibility due to the childcare situation and are continuing to work through those types of situations on a case-by-case basis. In the meantime, we've successfully developed policies and business practices to ensure both compliance and increased safety standards. And the city's overall guiding document is our preparedness and response plan, which also includes our COVID-19 emergency policy. And the purpose of this document is to identify the risk of occupational exposure for our workforce, to detail specific safety control measures being utilized, and to assign responsibilities for staff members for implementing our plan. The plan is updated as situation evolves. I mean, every day something is changing, so it's a pretty fluid document. The COVID-19 emergency policy details the safety practices again. It outlines the symptoms according to the CDC information and goes into great detail on the employee post-exposure procedure. It includes details on the Families First Coronavirus Response Act paid leave provisions and the form necessary for employees to utilize the leave time. As far as our other personnel needs, we've quickly adapted to a more digital platform for exchanging information with employees and prospective employees by utilizing our internal employee portal and an online forms application rather than hard copy forms and in-person delivery. Currently, we have several positions open. We are planning for the retirement of 2 key positions. On June 30th, our city engineer and director of municipal utilities are both planning to retire. We have succession plans in place for replacing both of them with internal candidates, but backfilling those successors positions is still somewhat up in the air along with our other open positions. Currently, we have 8 full-time positions open. Just a quick rundown: a heavy equipment operator, motor pool technician, 3 firefighters, the management analyst, and then due to the succession, we will have an assistant city engineer position open, wastewater treatment plant operator position open. And then we have at least 2 part-time administrative positions open right now, and we'll be looking to hire temporary help for voter registration for the upcoming presidential election, as well as our regular election inspectors. With seasonals, right now we've already hired 20 for this season, and we are looking at 35 more, which is down from past years. Right off the top of my head, we're at about half the lifeguards we typically would hire, and we'll be looking at not guarding several beaches because of that. The logistics of hiring and interviewing has been challenging, as you can imagine, but we're making our way through it. The process has been somewhat delayed for much of the seasonal onboarding with the closures. And we're looking at every full-time position, every open position is being evaluated for a delay in order to save money any way we can and anywhere we can. So that's the the quick and dirty on it. If anyone has any questions on those things or anything I didn't cover that you were thinking I might cover, I'm happy to answer that.
Thank you, Jen. Appreciate the update and all the work you've been doing. I know from experience, HR is pretty tough right now, so hang in there. Commissioners, do we have any questions for Jen? Go ahead, Commissioner Schlegel.
Thank you. By tiering the employees and the carpool and everything else, all of those city workers, and you know, what can we expect as far as our payroll and stuff goes? I mean, has that really been affected because, or are we really just paying people as we're going on? We're just slowing or limiting the amount of people that are out there doing the service.
Oh, with the stay home, we sent people home, but the majority of people were able to work remotely or somewhat in person. Obviously delayed, a little different challenges in that way, but we did maintain 100% of our staff to that point. As far as bringing seasonals on, obviously there's a little bit of savings with holding off on hiring people, but not a whole lot yet at this point. It's been the administration's, the city manager's direction to keep everybody on board to this point, but I'm obviously looking at in the future what we can do to keep costs down. You know, before we start looking at cutting our active employees' hours and that sort of thing, I'd prefer to halt hiring, and that's something we're talking about. We do have roughly 18 to 20 staff members, full-time staff members eligible for retirement in the next year. And that's something we can talk about too, if that's a direction you'd like to go in. But at this point, we have not made any cuts to staff.
Thank you. And I guess, you know, I'm looking at the direction that we've taken. I think it's the right one for the community as a whole. And granted, you know, we won't have all the beaches open, but there will be some that will be covered. We'll have parks open, and you know, I'm referencing like Minnesota. You know, early on they just said everything's shut down for the year. So nice job by staff and being able to maintain everything that they've been able to do. Thank you.
Mayor Pro Tem Hill?
Is and if you don't have this on the top of your head, that's totally fine. But are the folks who are planning to retire, are they spread out across departments, or is it in more than, is only in a couple departments?
I would say there is a lot in public works, but it's spread across citywide, yeah.
That does seem like a wise course of action. And I also want to applaud you for the flexibility and the hard work that you guys have been putting in to manage all of this and all the shifting of schedules and taking childcare into account. And I know too that from other discussions we've had, the documentation that we have to do to hopefully, when the federal relief does come, we can receive funds for backfilling some of the direct coronavirus expenses. Do you have a sense of that right now? And again, fine if you don't, but that just popped into my head.
I'm wondering if I'm understanding your question correctly. Gary actually compiled lost revenue and costs directly associated with the COVID situation. I wonder if Gary would have a better idea of what that number was when he's seeking FEMA funding for that.
Correct. And like I said, I think our biggest impact is going to be lost revenue. And unfortunately, none of these programs are talking about reimbursing for lost revenue. But the actual expense side, and I have it written down somewhere. As of about 10 a.m. today, we had to give refunds, mostly to tourist park, canceled campgrounds, of $19,730. And the actual expenses we have had so far are $13,790. Now that doesn't include payroll related things. I don't have that information, but the actual expense part really hasn't been a burden. And again, that's why my focus is on, potentially getting reimbursed for lost revenue, because that would be by far our biggest impact.
Thank you. That's very helpful.
Any other commissioners? Commissioner Davis?
Yeah, Jen, I'm just missing some information from my own head. I don't know the number of employees that the city have, and I don't know if you want to put that in FTEs. I also don't know for sure how many unions we have and where we are in the contracts with them.
Okay, so we have an average of 174 full-time employees. I believe the FTE average is 46. And then we have 5 unions and 3 contracts opening up this summer.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Any other commissioners? Making sure I'm not missing anyone. All right. Thank you, Jen. Appreciate your update. You're doing a nice job. Hang in there. All right, moving on to Becky Selman with the Marquette Downtown Development Authority. Thank you for joining us, Becky.
Thank you for having me. I have a PowerPoint presentation, so I'm going to go ahead and attempt to share my screen. So just bear with me here for a moment. Okay, can you guys all see that okay?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. Again, thanks again for having me and for allowing me the opportunity to speak to the work that the DDA is doing in response to COVID-19. Clearly, with the past 2 months, our focus has shifted to COVID-19 response and recovery and supporting our downtown Marquette businesses. And so what I'd like to do today is to share with you some of our efforts and ways that we are doing that. I'm going to start with communication because I feel like communication is key to almost every aspect of life. Immediately after the closures, we did work from home for about 6 weeks. We kept communication flowing with our downtown businesses throughout that time through a variety of means. Frequent email communications, which we find to be the most effective and efficient way of communicating with our businesses. We do have over 400 businesses, so that is our preferred mode of communication. However, we're also constantly updating our website with business resources, actively engaging in social media, personal phone calls, of course. We have hosted Zoom meetings with our downtown businesses, and our staff and myself have been participating in a number of webinars and virtual meetings with various groups and cohorts from throughout the state and even the country. And we have also conducted 2 surveys of our businesses to help us gauge and monitor the economic impact of COVID-19. One of those being conducted in April, and then the most recent in May. I should note the May survey ended on May 20th. It was just before the governor announced her reopening. So it is that one snapshot moment of time, which I think will be beneficial moving forward as we continue to monitor this and do additional surveying to see, okay, in June, how have we fared from this moment when businesses were able to start reopening even in a limited capacity. So I just want to share some information with you in that regard. I won't go into a lot of detail, but I'm happy to answer any questions later that you may have. One of our questions was, at what level is your business currently operating? That's pretty varied, considering some are allowed to open 25%, some are allowed to open 50%, and some are not allowed to open at all yet. So very few at that point in time were fully open for business. I believe there was only one response saying they were fully open. And you'll notice the green section, 36% of businesses were not open at all at that point in time. The majority, being the orange and the red section, were open in some sort of limited capacity, whether that be takeout, curbside pickup, appointment, online sales, whatever they were able to do to adapt is what we're looking at right now. And again, that I'm sure has changed drastically since last Wednesday. So just to keep that in mind. I'd also like to point out there are some major concerns both in the original survey and in this one as far as the outlook for our businesses. However, I would also say there are some glimmers of hope, and this slide reflects one of those. We asked businesses, if disruption continues, how soon will your business be at risk of closing permanently? You see the orange section, about 36% said 1 to 2 months. And with the green section, 26% said 3 to 5 months. And yes, that is obviously very concerning. To point out comparatively from the April survey, we had 27% who anticipated being able to stay open for 1 to 2 months, and 41% that said 3 to 5 months. I guess maybe I'm the eternal optimist, but I would say we're 2 months into it, and that 27% that indicated, being open for 1 to 2 months, that's the point that we're at right now. And as far as I know, nobody has actually had to close fully. So I take that as a sign of progress, if you will. We also asked the businesses, what is your current comfort level with reopening your business? And I just have to minimize this. Okay. 3% are not at all comfortable reopening right now. The majority are comfortable in some capacity. Again, going back to those limited capacities that we talked about before with the online sales, the pickup, the deliveries, the appointments. 19% say they are comfortable opening to the public. Similarly, we said, how comfortable are you currently with tourists traveling to Marquette from outside of the area? Again, 26% is not at all comfortable. Most people fall somewhere in the middle, either being somewhat comfortable, unsure, somewhat uncomfortable. It's worth noting that only 3% feel fully comfortable at this point in time. Okay, does your business have an online sales component? This I found particularly interesting. With the April survey, 39% did have an online component, while 61% did not. However, in the follow-up survey from May, 52% now have an online component, where 48% do not. So in the course of the closure, it looks like several, and it indicates here 40% have developed an online sales component since the government mandated shutdown. So I see that, again, it's a sign of progress that they are finding ways to adapt their business models in response to COVID-19. The next question, have you laid off employees as a result of the COVID-19 crisis? Both April and May, they pretty much mirror the statistics. About 68, 69% have had to lay off employees. 31, 32% have not. We followed that up by asking, have you been able to bring back laid off employees or hire new employees to fill existing positions since the start of the COVID-19 crisis? And 36% of those said that yes, they have been able to do that. How has your revenue changed since early March 2020 in response to the COVID-19 crisis? I did not include all of the range of answers. I felt that these were the most significant that I wanted to share with you. Specifically, as of April, 76% of our downtown businesses had lost 75% or more of their revenue. For May, we're looking at 68%, which is a slight improvement. Have you received any grant or loan funds from programs for which you have applied? This, I think, is particularly positive, I guess, in the whole scheme of things. And that from our original survey in April, only 30% of our businesses had been able to secure any kind of funding, whether that be through the MEDC loan, the PPP, the EIDL loan, or other options that were available. As of the May survey, 68% of those businesses who applied have been able to receive funding from one or more of those programs, with 86% being able to participate in the PPP program and 43% in the EIDL loan. So I'm happy to say that the businesses have been able to get enough support to keep them going a little bit longer. And I'm, again, very happy to see that. This next slide refers back to our original survey in April. One of the questions that we had posed to the businesses was, what concerns do you have as business owners? How can we help you? How can the DDA better support you? And I just wanted to go over this list to show you at that point in time what they were concerned about. Ongoing communications, financial assistance, of course, was a big one. Advocating for additional state and federal funding, better access to unemployment benefits, concerns about utility, rent, lease payments, consideration for relaxed parking fees, summer events and promotions, assistance in creating an online presence, guidance for reopening, and securing PPE and cleaning supplies. And I did want to just show you this list because you'll notice as I go through the rest of the presentation, some of the slides do have a little notation at the bottom like you'll see here, just to show you ways that we have responded to those concerns and different programs and initiatives that we have taken to address the concerns that they spoke to us about. This particular program I'm very excited about. It's called the Match on Main COVID-19 Response Program. It's a grant program offered through the MEDC, specifically to support small businesses located in traditional commercial districts such as DDAs who are impacted by COVID-19. The total program funding is $1 million. They are awarding $50,000 grants to, of course, their selected recipients. We are currently working on this application. It's due this Friday, so we're hot on that right at this point in time. The grant arrangement stipulates that we could provide between $2,000 and $10,000 maximum per business. And the way the application process works is that businesses who are interested in being considered submitted applications to us, which we are reviewing to then select those that we want to include in our overall DDA grant application to the MEDC. So that's where we are in the process right now. Again, we'll have that submitted by Friday and hope to hear back on Wednesday, June 10th, that we've been selected. So we'll keep our fingers crossed on that. As far as the eligible businesses and who is able to apply for that grant, it's pretty wide open. It's open to anybody affected by the COVID-19 outbreak, for profit, headquartered in Michigan and located in a downtown district, 25 employees or less. Our April survey did indicate that 90% of our businesses downtown have 20 or fewer employees. So that means, 80–90% of our businesses would be eligible based on that criteria. They're looking for businesses who sell products or services face-to-face. Those that have not previously received small business relief program funds through the MSF or Match on Main grant funding within the past 24 months. And the MEDC is really looking to focus on low to moderate income business owners. Again, a positive of this program would be the eligible uses of grant funds. Really, it's wide open to payroll, rent, mortgages, utilities, basically any kind of recovery expense having to do with COVID-19. So again, it's a great program and we're keeping our fingers crossed. The next slide, as you will recall, businesses were concerned about paid parking. And so in response to those concerns, we did shut the parking meters and pay stations down as of March 23rd. We typically bill quarterly for our rental parking permits. So we have held off on that. We haven't charged for Q2, which would be April, May, and June of this year. This represents, at this point in time, a $42,000 loss of revenue to the DDA, and that's through the end of May. Excuse me. If we were to continue on this course through June, that would represent about a $56,000 loss to the DDA. So again, we're taking our lumps along with everybody else to show support for our downtown businesses and employees. I would like to note, however, that all parking revenues go directly back into the parking system, and those funds are used to pay for services such as snow removal, lighting and maintenance repair of the Bluff Street ramp, the elevators, pedestrian connectors, parking lots. So we'll have to take a hard look at how long we can realistically forego that revenue and still be able to provide those essential services, especially next winter with the snow removal. So our parking committee will be meeting to discuss that and try to determine the optimal time for reinstituting paid parking. Again, wanting to still be sensitive to our downtown situation and our downtown business owners. And I'd also like to mention as part of this that parking enforcement of paid parking has also been temporarily suspended by the city. So they are also foregoing those revenues that they would otherwise be receiving for parking violations. One other point as far as the parking is that we have expanded our Passport Parking mobile pay app. And what that does is allows people to get on their cell phone and pay for their parking meters. And we will be offering digital parking permits through that platform as well, which will in the future, once we get that up and running, allow for contactless payment. Okay, and then our digital downtown Marquette platform. This is something that we implemented almost immediately upon the closures, recognizing that businesses were going to be open in different ways and only able to engage with their customers in limited means, or there would be a lot of questions as far as customers and how they could engage with our downtown businesses. So in response to that, we've created a virtual directory of downtown businesses. The business owners are able to go right on our website. They can provide their business name, address, contact information, website, social media links, hours, and then most importantly, their operational status, letting people know how are they open, what is their reopening plan moving forward. Events and promotions. As most of you know, we have had to cancel some of our events community-wide, but here at the DDA as well. And that's in compliance with the governor's executive orders, restricting large gatherings, and of course, out of concern for public health and safety. So we have at this point in time canceled the first two installments of Music on 3rd, being June and July. And we had to cancel a Blueberry Festival, which would normally take place July 31st. And we've also canceled the Classic Cars on 3rd Street, which would normally take place August 15th. That particular event relies heavily on sponsorships, and planning would normally be taking place, April, May, June right now, and it just did not seem appropriate to be soliciting sponsorships from businesses who are struggling financially. So that weighed into our decision to go ahead and close that event as well. However, all is not lost, because we still hold out hope that Music on 3rd for August and September will be able to happen. We'll continue to monitor that situation and make those announcements as we're able. We're also very much looking forward to a downtown drive-in. This is a new event that we've been considering and working with some partners on making that work. We feel like there are very few options out there right now that would allow for having an event while still social distancing. And I think this could work, and we're very excited to move that forward and announce a date once we're able to have some more information. And we will continue with Facebook and online promotions. One of our larger promotional efforts has been what we call the Brighter Days Ahead campaign. And that involves a couple different components, one being 2 billboards that we have up, one in Munising, one in Menominee. You'll see pictures of them there. The idea, the message that we're trying to convey is we know things are rough right now, but we're here when when we recover from COVID-19 and we're able to welcome you back. We're ready. Our downtown business owners are here. Downtown Marquette is still here. And we wanted to keep our brand out there so that as things change, we're able to adapt. And as part of that as well, we're expanding the Brighter Days Ahead campaign to include photos of some of our downtown businesses, which you see here. And the idea behind this promotional campaign is to feature downtown businesses displaying that message of hope for a brighter future, brighter days ahead for downtown Marquette. It's highlighting the families, the friends, and the neighbors who are the lifeblood of our locally owned small businesses. It's capturing the community connection and the Uper strong spirit that we've been seeing displayed, and also encouraging support of local businesses. And we're working with WLUC TV6 to have a series of commercials that will basically be a photo montage of our business owners, our employees downtown, offering that optimistic future. We've had a very, very good response to this promotion. We've got about 30 photos. I've only included a handful here, but we do have a number of other businesses as well who are participating in this program. And again, that's offered free to our businesses. Okay, I'd like to talk briefly again about the online presence. Just on the left there, just pointing out again that 48% of our downtown businesses currently lack an online sales component, and recognizing the need for businesses to be able to adapt their business model in response to COVID-19. We've had a couple of partnerships evolve, one being with WLUC TV6, who has offered free digital workshops for downtown businesses. And that's consultation about their digital footprint or how they can create or improve upon their online presence. They're also offering a $1,500 advertising certificate for businesses who participate in their workshops. And similarly, Invent at NMU has stepped up, offering free COVID-19 services for local businesses as well, as far as creating websites and the social media presence. So just wanted to say thank you to those partners for stepping up to fill a need. Additionally, we're partnering with the Lake Superior Community Partnership on their Love on Local gift card program. I won't speak to this too much at this point because I know Amy will likely be talking next about that, but that is something that we're partnering as well at this point in time. And then one of the primary concerns from our businesses now that they are able to reopen is how do we do it? You know, the governor has provided her restrictions. Retail's only able to open 25%, restaurants and bars at the 50%, and then offices are able to open as well. Right now we're shifting to, okay, how can we help them to open up and to abide by those restrictions? And we are partnering with the city of Marquette, as most of you know, to waive the sidewalk cafe, outdoor merchandise displays, and outdoor dining and beverage service permit fees and procedures in order to support the businesses reopening in compliance with those capacity limitations. We've partnered with Dr. DeLynn with Single Track Health to provide peer-based medical guidance to downtown businesses on how to prevent the spread of infection in our businesses. And we've been actively promoting any educational resources and webinars provided by other partner organizations, such as InvestUP and the partnership. So I think there's a lot of collaboration going on. A lot of people are doing some good work, and we're happy to share those resources. We have also created a Downtown Marquette Business Reopening Guide on our website that provides information on some of these executive orders, which, I mean, they're changing daily. And so there's a lot of questions, a lot of clarification needed. And so we're attempting to provide that information to the best of our ability. We've been sharing OSHA guidance. We've been sharing Marquette County Health Department information, links to City of Marquette permit application packets, Liquor Commission expanded permit applications. We've also provided customizable workplace preparedness and response plan templates, and that's something that's required by the governor for businesses who are reopening. And so we wanted to provide just a general form that they're able to take and customize it according to the needs of their individual businesses. And finally, we've offered printable signage templates for consistent messaging throughout downtown. You'll see some of those noted on the left. The idea there was all of these businesses are required to be posting signage. It could be, challenging for some of them to come up with that signage. We thought, why don't we put this template together, have our M logo on there to again provide that consistency downtown, and really the businesses can just print them off and display them as Baby Cakes has here. Another concern was the procurement of PPP, recognizing that businesses may be challenged to find masks for employees. We did reach out to the Masks for Marquette group, who were sewing masks for various groups and organizations. They were generously able to provide us those masks. We were able to then take 600 masks and get them out to our businesses so they could have them in place and ready to go as they were able to reopen. The DDA did make a financial contribution to the Masks for Marquette group on behalf of the downtown businesses. And the downtown Marquette Farmers Market has gotten a facelift. We did not feel it in the best interest of public safety to have the physical market, as we all know and love. It's a very popular place to be on Saturday mornings and can get rather congested. Recognizing that there's still that need to provide local fruits and vegetables and goods to the community, and that we wanted to work with our farmers market vendors to still provide them the marketplace to be able to sell their goods. We did create, at this point, a 100% online marketplace. It's a new platform that we've implemented that allows our vendors to enter all of their products online, our customers to go online and place their orders, and then to come on Saturday mornings to the Marquette Commons and pick up their orders with limited contact. So this past week, we had our soft opening, May 17th to 23rd. And just to explain briefly how the ordering process works, the ordering period opens on Sunday and runs through Wednesday night at midnight, after which then the vendors receive a pick list. They go out and they gather their goods and then bring them on Saturday to fulfill those orders. We have 44 participating vendors at this point in time who are participating in the online component. This first week, we had 168 online orders that were placed that represented $9,500 in sales. So tremendously successful. We look forward to growing this online market, and also eventually to reintroduce the physical market as restrictions are lifted. Our maintenance staff is working hard as well, frequently cleaning and disinfecting public areas. Right now we're focusing on bike racks, benches, trash cans, flags, flowers, the tree grates, the tree guards, really just sprucing up downtown to make it as welcoming as ever. And with that, I just want to give thanks to the DDA staff and board, the Downtown Marquette businesses, the City of Marquette, the Lake Superior Community Partnership, WLUC TV6, Invent at NMU, Marquette County Health Department, and Invest UP for partnering with us in these efforts. And together, we look forward to those brighter days ahead.
Thank you, Becky. Excellent presentation, very detailed. I did have a question on the survey. I think I heard you say there are over 400 businesses in downtown Marquette. Is that? So yeah, it just must be pretty difficult to get them to respond. It just, it'd be interesting to see what the breakdown of who actually responded. Do you think it was more restaurants or kind of varied across the ones who actually did respond? I just was wondering about that.
It was pretty varied. I would have information on that. I don't have at this time.
And that's okay. It's just that those are the things I'd be interested in seeing as this moves forward to, and I know it's hard to get them to respond, but just of the ones who do respond, you know, who are they? What does that look like? To give us a better idea of who responded, what that means, to help interpret that data. But great questions, absolutely. Commissioners, any questions for Becky on this excellent presentation? Commissioner Bonzo.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and thank you, Becky. I think I probably speak for everybody that I'm incredibly, when I say I'm incredibly grateful for all the work you're doing, the DDA has been doing. I think you're kind of laughing a little bit towards the end of the presentation because it's like, oh, another slide, but it's because you've really done that much stuff to help the community and local businesses, so I appreciate it. I just had a couple of questions. So I know that after the April survey, we did get some slides and some survey results, and there's an estimate in there that at that time, about a month ago, that there had been about a little under 400 job losses in the downtown district since the restrictions were put in place. Do we have any updated numbers? I didn't see that in the application or in the presentation.
I did not include that this time just because we had far fewer survey responses, and so I don't necessarily feel as though it's an accurate representation of the number of layoffs that have happened. We had 67 responses with the first survey and 31 this time, which, as I mentioned earlier, the survey responses ended on Wednesday the 20th, and that's right around the time that the governor was making her announcements, and everybody kind of shifted their focus to, oh my gosh, how are we going to reopen our businesses? And so I think it kind of got lost in the shuffle. So
no, I understand that. That makes sense. I really like the downtown drive-in idea. I know we had talked about that briefly before, and I think it's a really, really cool idea. Do you feel that you're getting, the support that you need from the city on that? I mean, is there anything that you need the city to help you with in order to make that possible?
With that particular event?
Yeah.
At this point in time, things are moving forward very smoothly. We have been in conversations with partners such as Double Trouble Entertainment, also speaking perhaps with a radio station who might be able to broadcast the movie over the radio frequencies. So there's been a lot of interest in this event, and at this point in time, I don't see anything that the city would have to do. I'm certainly welcome to any suggestions that anybody has, but I'm really confident that we can make this event move forward. When, I'm not 100% sure. Maybe later in the summer, just because the sun sets too early otherwise to be able to have an outdoor movie. So we're taking all of those factors into consideration.
No, that's great. I'm glad to hear that. The last question I had, I agree. I'm also very excited about the MEDC Match on Main grant application. Of course, our fingers will all be crossed that goes through and that we get that funding. I'm just curious what sort of demand you've seen for this kind of small business relief, and how long do you think that you're going to be able to make that money last? Because $50,000 doesn't seem like a lot.
It's unfortunately not a lot, but at this point, I think any bit helps. We're limited with how many people we are able to help just by the parameters of the grant, saying between 2,000 and 10,000 per business. So, I mean, we could realistically include 25 businesses for $2,000, or pick 5 and offer them 10. So it's pretty wide open as far as how we want to move forward based on the number of applications we received, on the quality of the applications, and if they meet the requirements of the MEDC.
Yeah, Great. I mean, how many, my last question would just be, how many applications have you received so far? How many businesses have expressed interest?
We received about 30 applications and the deadline has passed. So those are the ones that we're evaluating right now.
Great. Thank you. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Other commissioners? Commissioner Davis, go ahead.
Becky, I just want to congratulate you and your staff and your board on such a well-rounded program. It's very impressive. You know, our central business districts provide all of that confidence and feel in the community. And I think we're at a stage where we really need that. And your programming, your slides and your presentation help with all of that vibrancy. So I really appreciate it. I do have a question that's probably a little unfair because this is like an event that happens every 100 years. But I'm curious as to if you've given thoughts to how you will evaluate each one of these activities and the success of them.
Well, first of all, Commissioner Davis, thank you for your kind comments. I will pass them on to the staff. As far as evaluation, I mean, really, it's just continuing to communicate with the businesses, to be asking their feedback on these initiatives. Have they been working? What hasn't been working? What could we try now? I mean, I think the uncertainty of this COVID-19 situation that we find ourselves in lends itself to trying something and seeing if it works and hoping it works. And if not, modifying and trying something else.
So continually improving some of the things. And, you know, again, hopefully it won't happen for another 100 years and the majority of us won't be around. But some of what you're doing will be very helpful for future, you know, more immediate future success of Marquette. So thank you for adding to the vibrancy.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Other commissioners, Mayor Pro Tem Hill.
Yeah, extraordinary amount of work and an extraordinarily appreciate the time you took to put this presentation together. Phenomenal job. I get the sense that you guys are absolutely firing on all cylinders and just doing an incredible job of pushing all of this out there. And I think, so this is I'm sort of keying up a conversation I want to have later about with folks maxed out at providing these basic services to businesses, there's some bigger questions about the vibrancy of our community going forward through coronavirus that I think the city has a role to play, particularly around the zoning and access to streets and sidewalks and open spaces. And I think businesses are a partner in that. And so I think I get from this presentation that you guys are absolutely doing everything you possibly can to do what you can for this business members. But there are some, and I can't say that enough. I mean, it's just incredible. You've stood up all these programs in very short period of time. But I do think that there's these questions of access to space are ones that the city and the business community need to work on together. And with you guys being so doing such an incredible job and so maxed out, I'm wondering if there might be some other ways that we could work together to look at physical space issues. And have you given any thought to that?
We have given considerable thought to that. I know the closure of the 100 block of Washington Street is an issue that's being discussed right now. I do have some additional comments on that. I don't know if now is the time to do that, if we want to wait until the other presentations to open up that conversation. I guess I'll defer to the mayor as far as.
Yeah, let's go ahead and ask any other questions about the rest of Becky's conversation, and then Becky, if you want to run through that after that point, and I think we can just mainly focus on your bullet points and what that process would look like for us to discover additional opportunities.
Okay.
So do we have other questions from the commission or yourself, Mayor Pro Tem Hill, for Becky on the presentation thus far? I'm seeing Commissioner Schlegel. Okay, go ahead.
No, just I think I hope, well, the presentations that are, sorry, the idea just popped in my head. The presentations that we have today, are those going to be available on, besides inside this recording, could we make those available to the public on the city website? Because I think that, so people don't have to sit and watch all of this, they could just go through the slides. Yeah.
I just had the thumbs up from Sean, so we'll make that happen.
Okay, that's it. Again, and thank you, Becky, and your whole staff doing a phenomenal job.
Thank you very much.
Other questions from the commission on this great DDA presentation thus far? Go ahead, Commissioner Schlegel.
Real quick, just keep the positive going. Thank you for being half full, 3/4 full. Doing a great job. The digital component, I've used it. It's fabulous. The promos you've got going on are great. It's going to make us better in the long run, and we're going to utilize a lot more of this. I think probably in our everyday uses in the near future. It's the good part of the new normal. So thank you for that. I'm not real. I like the stats and stuff. Obviously, a little disappointed in the turnaround from the business owners. That's some very, very important information that they didn't give you. And it's nice to see what we did see, but we, out of 400 businesses, those guys, they should be clamoring to get to you right now to help you with obtain information that's going to allow you to be more aggressive in all of these other grant approaches and things along those lines. So keep rattling their cage and rattling their tree branches and make them respond to you. That's got to happen. So that's information that we can use as a community. So that's all I have. Great presentation. Thank you.
Thank you.
Commissioner Stonehouse.
Yeah, one small comment only. Thank you. Thank you guys for what you're doing over there at the DDA. Thank you for the effort going in. Thank you for being able to circle the wagons, get all the horses in line, and pull together that really helped the city get through this problem. Only word of caution is that, numbers lie. And if you're not getting enough participation in terms of surveys, then what you're getting in the result of that survey is obviously very questionable. And you guys know that. But sometimes we as the public look at those and we think that they're perhaps more correct than they may in fact actually be. So interpret the results like you're doing. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your comments.
Any other questions or comments on the presentation thus far? I don't see any hands being raised. So Becky, if you would go ahead and just kind of give us a rundown on, I know we've had a lot of conversation about the 100 block of Washington potentially being closed off to traffic. I know we've had businesses contacting us, probably you as well. What your thoughts are on that, and more importantly, not necessarily just the 100 block of Washington, but just physical distancing options, creativity, what that looks like from the DDA's perspective, and how you see the city potentially assisting with those conversations.
Sure. Well, first off, I just wanted to say thank you again to you, Mayor Smith, to the commissioners, to the city staff who was amazing in responding so swiftly and responsibly to the need that exists for the restaurants to be able to expand outdoors and to do so reasonably and without, cumbersome processes or fees to do that. And so I'm just very, very pleased to have offered that up to the downtown business community collectively. I feel like that's a fair and equitable way to do it because it applies to everybody across the board, district-wide. My main concern is again the fairness in how we approach additional accommodations and wanting to do it in a way that doesn't favor one area over another. I know that some businesses are proponents of closing the 100 block, and I certainly appreciate what they're seeing, what they're saying. You know, they're concerned for their businesses. My concern is, as the DDA, we are charged with representing the greater good of the overall downtown district. And I've personally spoken with others who are concerned if that block is closed, that it could be detrimental to their businesses. I've spoken with others outside of the 100 block that have expressed concern that closing just one part of downtown would make that inequitable or provide other opportunities or advantages to those that are within the enclosure area. And again, I just feel like what we've done so far, the measures that we put into place have been fair, they've been equitable. I would love the opportunity to see how it plays out. I mean, right now, things are changing so quickly. You know, the governor's orders are coming at us like crazy. It's difficult just to keep up with them on a daily basis, much less to make a drastic plan or take drastic measures, not knowing what the future will hold or if that demand is there. So rather than at this point say we're going to just close the street, I would prefer the opportunity to let's ride this out. Let's see how this affects the businesses, and monitor the situation and kind of move on from there if the demand is there, if it's something that we need. If the businesses are turning away customers, then yes, let's think about that. But we don't know if society or if the community in general is going to be comfortable coming back to those types of settings. So again, it's very difficult to do more than what we're doing at this point in time without having an understanding of our circumstances. And as far as closing the street, I think there are so many factors and logistical issues that would have to be researched further to even be able to do it in a safe manner. I think it's a major public safety concern. I think, we've canceled all of these community events like we mentioned earlier. So are we risking encouraging people to congregate downtown, almost creating a festival-like atmosphere when, let's not forget that the COVID-19 threat is still out there. And so I think we need to be very careful with how we move forward with that. I think there are concerns as far as emergency services, the fire, the police, the ambulance. Would they be able to get into a situation like that? I'm concerned about handicap accessibility. I don't want to compromise access to that block for our handicapped population. I'm concerned about liability issues. I don't know that the DDA is prepared to take on the liability of doing something like this. Enforcement, I think, is another issue that we'd have to work with very closely with the police department. Parking availability. I mean, we have parking challenges. I think we all know that on a regular circumstance. And so throwing a street closure where we'd be losing 27 on-street parking spaces right at the busy time of year, we're going to have employees coming back to work. They're going to need some place to park. That's a concern. Delivery trucks, armored vehicles, I mean, those types of operations that still need to happen. How would we do that? How would we be able to basically provide the means for operations to continue with having that street closed? Again, and this was mentioned yesterday at the City Commission meeting by Mr. Durley, we're looking at downtown, which is a very condensed area. And so using a business that might have 2, 3, 4 businesses in one building, how do you delineate place on the street for each of those businesses? For example, the 906 building. So they have Lanyap, they have 906, they have 2 retail spaces at street level, being the Gree Specialty Shop and Tyga Games. So right there, we've got several businesses with small frontage on the street who would get that space. You know, it's those type of issues that would have to be vetted as well. I guess final concern would be just the environment itself, as far as the cleaning, the maintenance, the tables and the chairs. Would they be outside all the time? Would they be expected to be hauled in and out by the business owners? If they are left outside, who's responsible for them? I would have concerns about vandalism, of larceny. I mean, there are many, many variables here, and I just don't feel like that is a decision that could be made hastily and without a very thorough amount of research to know if it's possible and how we would address all of those concerns.
I really appreciate that summary, Becky. Those are a lot of those points I hadn't heard before, but it really helps to kind of wrap our head around how long of a process it really would be to even look at that. Not that that's something that, you know, would necessarily happen, but given all those concerns, if this is a route that the city and the DDA was to go in the future, am I correct in saying that first it would come from the DDA board as an approval if they decided to go that route, and then it would come to the city commission for final approval? If the DDA board decided it's not a route that they would want to go, the city commission wouldn't necessarily be a part of that decision. Correct?
That's correct, yes.
Okay, I just wanted to clarify that because we as commissioners have been getting quite a few comments and questions, and while we are part of that decision potentially down the road, to me it sounds like there's quite a bit of research, planning, conversations that we need to go in before it would even be brought up to your board. And at this point, I think the DDA has enough on its plate and enough new provisions that have allowed for some flexibility to see if those will work for the time being. Would you be in agreement with that, Becky?
Yes, absolutely.
That's my my mentality at this point, knowing that 100 block of Washington closure is something that seems kind of interesting to think about, but maybe is not something that we can make happen tomorrow. And you know, that's my opinion, and I'm entitled to that opinion. It may not be the opinion of the entire commission, but I want to make sure that the things we've put in place have a chance to succeed. And I'm worried that taking on too much could be difficult. And I see other commissioners maybe shaking their head yes or no, but that's where I'm at. I just wanted to at least clarify the process. You know, DDA would make that decision, and then it would filter down to the commission for final approval. Do we have commissioner comments or questions for Becky on this topic before we move on to the Lake Superior Community Partnership presentation? Go ahead, Mayor Pro Tem Hill.
I don't think anyone is expecting this to happen tomorrow.
Well, some of the businesses I spoke with would like a temporary something to happen as soon as possible. So that's where I'm getting that, Mayor Pro Tem.
Right, and so I hear that you've heard that people want this right away. And that was a very clear list of the things that need to be worked through. There are documents that exist right now from nationally vetted organizations on how to make your street something more than just something for cars. And they've been around for 20 years. This is not, I mean, some of this is a little bit of coronavirus around some of the issues of social distancing, but a lot of this has been done and everywhere, Latin America, Europe, United States. This is not, you know, communities are doing this all over the world. And so, and I hear how overwhelmed the DDA is in what you're doing. And that's why I think it's incumbent upon the city and other community and the other parts or other businesses to step up and help us think about how to do this and not dump everything on the DDA. I don't think that's fair. And in terms of the question of, you know, well, what about this block and what about that block? And those are those are the kinds of things that have to be discussed and over and worked through a process. And that can take several months. But the value of that conversation for people to hear what they're doing and understand the dynamics of businesses on 3rd Street versus, and not just the 100 block, but all the way down to 7th. Or what if we did something with the parking lots instead of the streets? Like, there's so many opportunities that I fear we're going to miss if we just say, well, and you're right, you are doing a lot, but there are so many other opportunities. And I really think that there are people who want to step up and help figure this out. And let's create the opportunity through a process, a committee, a task force, whatever you want to call it, to help people who want to think about these things find a way to make it happen. And it doesn't have to happen. It doesn't happen tomorrow, but we've got July and August to come. What more can we do, but without dumping everything on the incredibly hardworking DDA, but to let a group of people think about it?
Commissioner Stonehouse?
I would only point out that there is absolutely no consensus that closing Washington Street is a good idea, or that the majority of people in this city want it, or that the majority of business people want it. Some people may want it, some people do want it, but that's no reason for the DDA to have to go through a drill to bring in, as you are describing, a very large functional bureaucracy to try and determine what we should do with our streets. I find that to be totally out of the discussion that we should be having tonight of how we can assist and what we can do, et cetera, et cetera. It's just not something that the City Commission at this point in time should be involved in, nor should the DDA. We're not trying to determine how many streets can we close off permanently, like we do in Europe, like the famous shopping streets. We're not built that way. That's not.
I never said permanent.
We're not built that way. We don't have alternative routes of transportation. We're not trying to get away from cars. We're not trying to go to bikes. We have no ulterior social motives involved here. What we are is trying to recover as best we can from the COVID-19 epidemic. That's what we're trying to do. And to return the city back to the way it was, to normal. That's the goal as far as I can see it.
Commissioner Davis?
I guess I have to speak here a little bit from having had businesses. Commissioner Schlegel and I both grew up in restaurants, and we know the long hours, and we know the very thin line that happens between profit and nonprofit. And we've heard from restaurants that want to expand their capacity, and I understand that. Probably during their busy times is when they want to do that. I've also owned a retail business for 19 years, and we haven't heard a lot from those folks. I know what it's like to get the merchandise all delivered in March. All your summer merchandise comes in, and then you hope that you sell through by the end of the summer, and they've just lost a couple months. And right now they're ordering for the fall, and who knows what kind of orders they're going to put in because they don't know what kind of business they're going to do. But if I were to think about the business that I had, I personally would not be in favor of moving everything outside. You've got tables to move out. You've got the weather to deal with. Your merchandise gets dirty. You have extra staff. And so I feel that the DDA and the businesses are the people that we need to listen to here. And I think the DDA has the pulse of that group. And I do respect the restaurants that want to move some of their business outside, but it's probably during certain times that they want to do that. So I guess I would still look to the DDA and their advice for these kinds of things. It's not something that a lot of us have experience with. We certainly don't have experience in a COVID situation.
Commissioner Schlegel?
Thank you. I think we're spinning our wheels here on a topic that needs to be addressed at a later time. We got a lot of opportunities to make some serious changes because of this event, and we could take this and we could look at it and use it during a special event in the next 12 months or 24 months, see how it works, maybe tailor it, make some temporary changes throughout the year to how we're functioning on that street. But again, this is a COVID issue where we got to deal with business at hand. And if you noticed, the ones that jumping right back in the rack with business are the restaurants, and because they know that they've got to take care of so many more other things that are going to limit the amount of business that they can do already. But then we've already opened up the avenues for the retail spots to move their stuff out on the sidewalks with what the business that we took care of last night. So we are making some positive changes, no doubt about it. But this is something that we need to come in with a solid game plan, study the other communities, use them, maybe not, depending on what their successes are and whatever. But it's not. We're wasting time right now. We gotta focus on the COVID and then address this when we can do it in a manner that's not gonna. To rush this through would be silly.
I hear you, Paul, or Commissioner Schlegel, Paul, whatever, same guy. I think at this point, we'll just pin this conversation for now. It's something that probably will come up again at a later date, but I would trust the DDA to help lead that effort if and when it makes sense. Obviously, different commissioners may have different opinions on that. We can continue to discuss, but I think for the sake of tonight's work session, we need to move on to our next presentation. So Becky, thank you again. You've done an excellent job and continue to do so. We really do appreciate what you're working on there at the DDA.
Thank you.
All right, so moving on. Go ahead. Sorry.
I just said I appreciate all of you as well. So thank you.
Thanks. Okay, so we've got Amy Klickner here with the Lake Superior Community Partnership. Amy, go ahead and take it away. And I think you do have a presentation that you're able to share with us too.
Yes, so my technology detail is more on the Mike Angeli side than the Becky side. So let's hope that I can pull this off.
Yeah, Amy, I see you are sharing your screen, but we can do it here at the city if you'd rather. So, but it looks like you've got it. So
did I do it?
We'll let you roll. Yeah, slideshow. Doing a good job.
All right. Oh my gosh, I did it. Okay, you have no idea how proud I am of myself for that.
Great.
And G is following Becky with such amazing work. I've known Becky for a very long time, but we also enjoy at the partnership working closely with the DDA and her staff. That's just wonderful. So as you all mentioned, you're very blessed to have such a amazing DDA staff that's on top of everything and so creative. So I'm just going to run through some of these. I know that you also have the slides. And okay, so again, once the COVID-19 hit, and the word pivot is used a lot in economic development and other things, but it really wasn't as much of a pivot for more rural and more micropolitan and smaller communities, because business retention and expansion is kind of our bread and butter. It's where we spend 80% of our resources and our time already. I think those colleagues of mine that I've talked to across the country that are in much larger organizations that spend a lot of time on business attraction, big game hunting, if you will, had a harder time making that change to making sure they were back in the businesses that are there, that are paying taxes, that are, providing services and goods. Where I think we had kind of a natural shift. It's just a matter of we had to do it remotely. And also we had to do it fast and furious. So as a lot of the things in the downtown have gone away, things like our business after hours and our golf, all the event type things have so far been canceled, obviously. But our focus has been 100%, on working with businesses. So far this year, we've worked with over 500 businesses, and that was at the end of April. The strange thing about that, as far as the needs of the businesses, is that our annual goal is a little over 500 typically is what we do in an entire year. And we've busted that out in the first 4 months. We'll see the same on our website. Obviously we made changes to the website and have a whole COVID-19 resource page. for businesses, for employees, employers, grants, different types of things. We've seen that increase 51% since the stay-at-home started. We've been doing webinars that have helped not only us learn, but also provide information to businesses and small businesses in particular that don't necessarily have a legal department or an HR department there to help them. So whether it's PPP or loan forgiveness, last week it was how to write, how to use or how to fill out your preparedness and recovery plan. We also have had Leo, the Department of Labor and Economic Opportunity, to talk about the WorkShare program, which is so incredible and a great way for folks to onboard employees that are worried, obviously, about the cost of ramping up without the business revenue to offset it. We've seen our attendance in webinars go up 10 times from what we were doing last year. Not going to talk a lot about the MEDC grant loan program. I would imagine that Marty's going to touch on that as they were the lead there. But I can tell you, when you talk about loan and grant programs, in particular grant programs, there's such a need out there. And in Marquette County, we had about 200 applications and about eight or nine were funded. And that is just simply, there's not enough resources to match the need. The toolkits that we've been doing range from when we started, what's a crisis checklist, what should you be doing to help conserve revenue at this time, and look at what you should be doing as far as working with your landlord, working with your utilities, what can you offset, what other products or services or types of delivery can you go, like we've talked about, curbside and delivery types of services. How do you upgrade that, do more online? Our staff has done continuous training, because a lot of this is new to us too, and a lot of the programs that we're working with. But again, it's worked real smoothly. I had no clue what going to all remote would be like, but I have to say the staff that I work with adjusted. Well, they're all younger than me, so they adjusted really, really quickly and have made it work. The one thing I will say on the loan side, we also do the staffing for the Marquette County Economic Development Corporation. And because our loan fund is an A rating, some of the COVID-19 resources that have come out, there's a non-competitive and a competitive side to them. And if you were rated, if your loan fund was rated A or B, you were invited on the non-competitive side to put additional dollars into a separate fund to deal with businesses that need to just get over this hump and start their reopening phases and phase in. So we're applying for $500,000 through that fund, which is what we were invited to do. So we're looking forward to hopefully having that all work out, and then again have some more small, very low interest type of loans that hopefully will be able to help folks just get through the next few months and get back on track. This is just showing you basically where we spend our time. This was the end of the first quarter. Again, 86% of our time gone. It's about up from 80% over last year on business retention. We're still seeing startups, believe it or not. And again, we do work all over the county of Marquette. These are the toolkits that are on our website, from, like I said, a crisis checklist all the way to the newest one, which is our business restart toolkit that has a lot of templates and samples and reminders for as you begin to restart your business. We also launched our strategic partnership with SBAM, Small Business Association of Michigan, which has just been incredible. This is something where if you're an investor in the partnership, you are able to also have a dual membership in SBAM, and we do a lot of things together. They do a lot on the HR and lobbying side, which is awesome. They also have an Ask the Expert for their members. So if you have a specific HR question, and this is in particular, again, for small business, you have a place to go to get some answers. They also have PPE sources that are for members only, and we know that has been a problem, but we believe it will continue to be a problem as more and more businesses open. And then also they're just launching that our members will also be able to use is what is called ClearPass, and it's a health screening app. So it's a way to really take the work out of screening your employees when they come in the morning. Instead of using the paper forms that the health departments are having, these are put right in an app. And this will be free to use for our investors and a way to track all of their employees as they self-report. Becky mentioned Love on Local. This was something that, similar to the Be Local, Buy Local that the chamber had. There were so many people that were passionate that had worked on the Be Local, Buy Local. They had come to us at the end of last year and said, if there's any way we could, revive this program in some way, we'd be willing to help. We think it's really important. And so we started to do the research on it, which of course got accelerated because of the situation we're in. So we were able to, along with some partners, be able to put the program out there. We just launched it. They'll be sold at the Lake Superior Community Partnership and the Ishpeming Negaunee Chamber right now. Once we open, the online will be its first availability. We had 4 major underwriters for this program in MBank, Range Bank, Enbridge, and Eagle Mine. And we already have about 50 businesses signed up, and you don't have to sign up to use it. It's just like using a debit card or a credit card. But if you do sign up with us, we're able to market it, use your logo, put it on the website, provide you with a free marketing toolkit that can help let people know that you accept the cards. And so this just started, and we're looking forward to it ramping up as the summer goes along. Keep Up Working is something that we've been working on with Staying Decision Systems, Manpower, and Michigan Works. Again, during this time, there are still companies, in particular the essential companies, that are still looking to hire. And again, Jen mentioned that you have several openings at the city as well. So this is just reminding people that, there's still jobs out there. And we realize that obviously one of the things we hear a lot from our businesses is the federal $600 kicker to unemployment, oftentimes has people above their wages where they were working. I'm not saying it's not an important benefit to have, but it also does make it difficult on the business side from a hiring perspective. So this was just a way to keep reminding people that jobs are out there. On the flip side of the one page lists specific jobs that are out there. This is all online. And again, we just want to be able to, refer folks to our workforce development partners, and they can help you. But again, jobs are still available in Marquette County. So just taking a little bit of a look ahead and what we're seeing, I guess nobody really knows, and we talked about the uncertainty, and from a business perspective, the worst thing you can do is provide uncertainty for them and moving forward. But remote work will continue to be interesting. So I think, we will see businesses that continue to have folks work remotely at home. And so what does that mean for office space, or how will buildings that are now not used have to be reworked? Social distancing, when and how long does that stay into effect and impact us, especially when we're an area that tourists and concerts and festivals are really, really important to our area. On rebound and recovery, as we looked in the rebound stage right now, and how do we get there and when do we get there? There's some that say we are rebound by the end of this year. We won't see recovery till the end of 2021 into 2022. I think this does give us an opportunity, though, to have a bigger discussion, a broader discussion countywide on what is our recovery strategy? What does that look like? We are working with QPAD and some other folks about being able to put together a recovery plan and something that would be able to give us a playbook, if you will, for moving forward. And I think somebody else had this point. we don't know if and when this is going to happen again. So what we learn from all of this and what we can archive from all of this and what we can put in place, if we had to take a step back, how prepared are we to handle it and then recover from it again? And I think this gives us an opportunity to look at what that is. And of course, with crisis comes opportunity. Things are going to change, but let's talk about rural America just real quickly. There's a lot of discussion across the country on what advantages rural America has. We're wide open spaces. We're not elbow to elbow when we go anywhere. Typically, public transportation isn't something that a majority of the population uses. A little bit safer in that sense. So, you know, a lot of what we're seeing is, you know, families and people now having that conversation is, where do I want to live after this crisis? And now we've proven we can work remotely. So no more can you say Marquette County can't handle it. You know, they're in the sticks, it's not working. We just did it. And we've done it for a couple months. So I think it makes us very, very attractive as people start looking at separating versus, you know, congregating more in an urban setting.
Thank you, Amy.
That kind of fast, but nope, just ran through it kind of fast and just don't know if there's any questions. But again, we work closely with Marty and we work with Becky at the DDA. And so we're just very blessed with some wonderful partners.
Excellent. Thank you very much for the presentation and the updates from a more of a county-wide perspective. You know, what good efforts you've been making. Commissioners, do we have any comments or questions for Amy Klichner? Commissioner Schlegel, go ahead. Oh, you're on mute.
There we go. Sorry about that. Thank you, Amy, for the presentation. I was really looking forward to seeing what you guys were going to have to say tonight. And I like a lot of what I heard, so that's good stuff. Well, the biggest takeaway that I really appreciate, and I think it's going to transcend throughout all of these presentations that we've seen tonight and the next year and a half, is how are we prepared to handle this should something like this happen again? This is, like, again, exactly what Commissioner Hill was talking about moments ago. This is a way for us to reevaluate and plan for the future, and use maybe some new tactics to make sure that we are in a better place should something at this level, or even hopefully much lower than it comes through the pipeline to us in the future. So that's something I want us to drive home when we're talking about these things to our constituents, when we're talking to our small business people, when we're talking to our big businesses. They have to be involved in this process in order to make sure that we can serve them all as best as possible in the future, because we're doing a pretty good job, all things considered. But at the same time, it's all new to us, and that's why, you know, we can't spin our wheels, and we gotta keep, you know, moving ahead here with the best we can. And hopefully, by the time we figure out what's coming next, things are going to be changed for the better, and we won't even have to use some of these things that we may be prepared to put in place, but we'll have them in place for the future. So that's what I really like about what I'm seeing from that presentation, Amy. Thank you.
Thank you. And I think you're right. Shame on us if we waste this crisis and don't learn from it and build on it. I mean, this is our opportunity to make the most of it. And I think you're right. I think we've fared pretty well. I'm with Becky on the 3/4 glass full kind of thing. There's a lot of areas that are much worse off than us. And I think we have the collaboration and the SISU, if you will, here to be able to pull together and get it done. So thank you for that.
Thank you. Other commissioners with any questions or comments? Mayor Pro Tem Hill?
Oh, I am unmuted. So I'm hearing one thing that hasn't been covered yet is childcare, and as both an economic development issue, which I know I've heard you talk about, Amy, and as well as with the great uncertainty around schools and that we might have to have part-time school, at least for the next year. I don't know if I just think that's going to be a big piece of where we end up. And Again, you guys are doing a lot. You're doing a great job. You've ramped up incredibly. Congratulations on that. A big, big leap. But I think what happens with children, childcare, schools, and childcare was a hurdle before.
Yes, and so you're absolutely right. I think housing will also remain an issue, but childcare. So one of the things that we're doing is we have joined the Northern Michigan Chamber Alliance many, many years ago, and it's the 14 counties right below the bridge that have so many similar things and issues that we do in the Upper Peninsula. So working jointly, those are some of the things that we're working on from a housing perspective, a childcare perspective, and originally, when we started all of this, we were hoping to create some types of incentives for rural areas, in particular in the childcare area. And we know that incentives are going to be a no-go for the most part, with state budgets, local budgets, anything like tax credits and things that used to be on the table. So it's time again. We have to get creative. We have to be innovative, but that is going to be a big problem, and it is being discussed. But you're absolutely right. It's just another one it's shifted in priority.
Thank you.
So thank you.
Any other commissioners? All right. I think in the sake of time, we'll get going to our last presentation. Thank you so much, Amy, for joining us and for all the good work that LSCP is doing for our community.
Thanks for having me tonight.
Yeah, thank you. Okay, we're moving on to Marty Patante with Invest UP, and I'm trying to find that presentation. Marty, if you're able to share your screen, that would be excellent. If not, we probably can get it up here. So there we go.
I'm going to try, and I don't want to fail where Amy succeeded. And I will say I'm working with a handicap as well, in that COVID provides many challenges, many very profound. But the one challenge I'm working with is a very needy dog who has been on my lap this whole time, and now a lap that's essentially paralyzed. So so bear with me if you see a little red head pop up here. Part of what COVID has brought is like neurotic dogs as well. So in any event, thanks so much for this opportunity. I think what the commission is doing is so important, and hope other communities really follow your lead. And I think to really take off on the point that Commissioner Slagle made is really kind of a focus for what I'd like to talk about for the few minutes I have with you. And that is really, how do you make opportunity from this? And we are certainly having some profound challenges. And so there have been 5, to my knowledge anyway, 5 Upper Peninsula surveys that have been done. The Federal Reserve, we're part of the 9th district. We're part of a district that has 6 other states to the west of us, including Wisconsin, but not part of Lower Peninsula. They're not part of the same district. They've conducted 3. Northern Initiatives has conducted 1, and then we, along with Michigan Works and all the local economic development organizations, have also conducted 1. The screen that you have in front of you now is kind of the highlights from the survey that we did along with Michigan Works and all our great partners on the local economic development front. And so I think to Commissioner Stonehouse's point, you have to be very concerned about what the numbers say, but we are seeing some overlap and some consistency with those surveys. So this survey went out UP-wide through the networks that we have and that all our local economic development partners have. We got 332 responses back. So a strong number, considering that LEO, Labor and Economic Opportunity for the state, says we have about 7,600 businesses throughout the Upper Peninsula. So about 4% of the UP business community responded. I will say it's probably skewed in terms of what that response looks like. Not a lot of manufacturing input, probably in part because manufacturers are doing relatively well compared to some of the other businesses that are challenged across the Upper Peninsula. But we got a pretty good snapshot of what that looks like. And so just a couple of the things that I want to highlight there include that from that survey, 90 businesses already indicated that they were closed. So 90 of the 332, and roughly half said that they wouldn't make the year unless there was some transition to normalcy. So a significant number, and one that is certainly concerning for all of us. Additionally, we saw that of those 332 respondents, that they already had furloughed or laid off some 2,000 employees. So that doesn't include some of those bigger layoffs like we saw with Cliffs and some of the other manufacturers, principally over in Berga County. There's another in Marquette County that was on the bit bigger side where there was a warn notice issued. So for a business community that roughly averaged about 12 employees, you know, that's a fairly big number for those 332 businesses. And then additionally, the other one I would highlight here is that by year's end, they forecast a loss of revenue or sales over $500,000 on average. So again, for our community, big and concerning numbers for sure. Additionally, then the next slide is from the latest survey that the Federal Reserve did, and that was conducted on May 7th, or excuse me, May 4th through the 8th. The survey that you just saw from the UP Economic Development Community was just days before that. So the timing coincided. It wasn't ideal, but it's when the surveys ran. We've traditionally seen from our business community, and maybe no surprise, that they've really been great participants in the Federal Reserve surveys. In fact, the first time, despite the fact that we're about 3% of the population for the 9th district, we led the district in survey returns. So we've consistently had really strong feedback from them. There's 3 slides from the Federal Reserve that follow here. And what I would invite you to do is Ron Wirtz, who's the one of the staff with the Federal Reserve that we've been working with on the survey side, has kindly given up his time tomorrow, and he will go through the results of the entire survey portfolio that the Federal Reserve has done for the Upper Peninsula, including this last survey. And you're welcome to join that. It's tomorrow morning at, I think it's 10 o'clock. The link is at update906.com. So you can go and register. Our good friends at the LSCP are once again partnering with us using their GoToMeeting platform to allow Ron to present these findings to the Upper Peninsula community. So we certainly welcome you to get more detail from him, to get a better understanding from the Federal Reserve's perspective and the snapshot that they're taking, what that looks like. But as you can see from this survey, sales and revenue for the UP, 47.4% of the respondents here expected that sales and revenue would be lower for April of 2020 versus April of 2019 by 75% or greater. 18% or between 50 and 75%, and 15% of those respondents said that their sales or revenue would be down between 25 and 50% compared to the same month last year. So a total of 81% of the respondents from the Upper Peninsula, 81% of the respondents from the UP said that they were going to see at least a minimum reduction of 25% in sales or revenue. Next, the Federal Reserve also looked at workforce levels April 2020 to, versus the same month in 2019. Again, some significant impact. 48% of UP respondents indicated that they were going to be significantly lower, and 22% indicated that they would be modestly lower. So 61% of those respondents indicated that there would be a modest to significant change in what their workforce looked like in that in the 1 year that they were analyzing with this survey. And then lastly, if you look at if current economic conditions persist, kind of that same question that the UP Economic Development Community looked at, how long could firms stay solvent? And this is the one that I think should be and is most concerning for us. 6% of the businesses indicated that they had less than a month. 32% roughly indicated that they had between 1 and 3 months of bandwidth left. And then lastly, 21% indicated that they had 4 to 6 months left if there wasn't some transition for them back to some normalcy of operation. So roughly 59% of our really small business community, I would say, is on the clock. And that compares with the other area that's been consistent with us, and that's kind of the outstate Minneapolis area. So the more rural parts of Minnesota. And that I think transitions well in terms of why there's some similarity to those areas, but I think why we're feeling it a bit more acutely. There's no doubt the impact here has been big and it's been diverse, but for us in the Upper Peninsula, I think it's been exacerbated by a few things. And from our perspective, the surveys kind of all point to this, and it's good awareness so that I think from that we can decide how do we react and adapt to that. And so the first is, of course, Michigan had some tighter restrictions, particularly compared to the Dakotas, and then Wisconsin once their Supreme Court interceded. Additionally, some of our sectors are more susceptible, including food, lodging, retail, and tourism. The studies seem to be aligned there. And then additionally, I think it's what's most concerning from our perspective is the seasonal nature of our economy. You know, we have some indication that upwards of 50% of our economy is rooted in seasonal types of business. And of course, if we miss the season, we effectively missed the year for so many of these businesses. And so as Rebecca pointed out, you know, PPP has been a big help for many businesses, but unfortunately, PPP does not help many of the seasonal businesses and some of those food, lodging, and tourism businesses because of the way that program is still, it's under consideration for amendment in Congress right now, but the way that it was designed. So in order to have the Paycheck Protection Program transition from a loan to a grant, the business needs within 8 weeks of receipt of those funds, and they had to receive the funds within 10 days of being approved. They need to push 75% of that money out towards payroll. And it just isn't and wasn't practical for many of those businesses because many aren't operational to meet that threshold. So although that program was certainly well-intended and has been a great help to many Upper Peninsula businesses, our banking community did a great job in pushing that money out. It unfortunately isn't meeting the needs of some of what are probably our more vulnerable businesses. And incidentally, I would also want to say here that the stimulus package has some other challenges as well that I think are consequential to the UP as well. And I think as you've gotten a sense from Rebecca's presentation and all the great work that the DDA is doing and Amy's presentation and the invaluable assistance that they've offered to small business and the resource that they are to us as well, that really is a reflection of what we're seeing across the Upper Peninsula with economic development organizations. I think one of the great things that Amy mentioned is the ability that we have in the Upper Peninsula to collaborate. And I think since this crisis in particular, it has really shown the economic development community to come together to look for solutions. So unfortunately, the CARES bill writes out for assistance C6 organizations, and many of the local economic development organizations are C6 organizations, so they are not eligible for the assistance that other nonprofits are eligible for. So I say that because as locals and as businesses will have difficult decisions to make because of these budget challenges, I think it's imperative that we find ways to support them. So my organization is a bit different. Invest UP is a regional economic development organization. It's funded entirely by the private sector. We have 19 investors. And so it's a different model that was stood up in November of 2017. And so that's not to say that we're insulated from these challenges, but I think we're in a bit better position than maybe some of the local economic development organizations who are doing this type of good work that you're hearing about tonight all over the Upper Peninsula. And in fact, we've already lost one economic development organization in Iron County. Schoolcraft County is losing its director this Friday. And that'll leave 4 counties in the Upper Peninsula without any boots on the ground. So is an organization like ours is looking to be a resource regionally and looks to not be constrained by kind of the artificial political boundaries that come with local economic development organizations, and try to use scale as a resource in that regard and relationships as a resource. These local economic development organizations really are critical. And so I say that, so when you're out having conversations with business leaders, and when you're having conversations from a policy perspective, or you're talking to policy leaders on a state and federal level, you know, please make sure that that's part of that conversation, because again, you're hearing tonight how important that is. Lastly, as we talk about the programming side, just to touch on a question that was raised in terms of need, and it may have been Commissioner Hill. There is no doubt there is a significant need here, and that need is ongoing. And we get some sense of that from the program that we administered on behalf of the MEDC, as Amy touched on, that pushed out both grants and loans. So across the Upper Peninsula, despite the fact that the local EDOs did a really good job in, I think, managing expectations and vetting applications, we still received 800 applications, and we only had, again, although well intended by the MEDC, enough money to push out about 80 awards to recipients. And so, you know, roughly 90% of those that applied walked away disappointed. And really, from our perspective, as you saw those applications, it was really hard to differentiate between somebody who was receiving the award and somebody who wasn't, because 99% of them all had a real and sincere need for that type of money. And additionally, that need is found in some money that the Northern Initiatives was administering for the MEDC as well. And within 24 hours, I think the number was over 2,000 applications that they received. So they actually had to shut the portal down because the need was so overwhelming. So moving forward, there's no question that there is still a robust need out there for our business community. And I think that's why conversations like this are so important. The state, with its budget constraints, as you heard from Dennis, aren't going to be able to offer the type of programming that's going to be needed. We'll see what type of additional programming is coming from the feds, but I think very consistent with what we see in the Upper Peninsula so often, and we're so good at finding creative solutions. It's really what's incumbent upon us, and again, why I'm grateful to be part of this conversation. Because at the end of the day, I think that's really my takeaway, and it's one that Amy touched on and Commissioner Schlegel touched on, and is, don't waste the crisis. There is opportunity in this challenge. When this crisis started, Governor Snyder, who was instrumental in standing up this organization, when local businessmen and businesswomen went to him to say, what can we do to help the economy? He challenged them with some ideas. And so we invited him back to the table as this crisis unfolded. And his challenge to us here was, I think, much like you're thinking, you know, identify what you want the future to look like, and then go get it. And I think that what you did last night is an example of that in the short term. I think local policy leaders like yourselves and community leaders, and the vision that you have to try to get obstacles out of the way for small business so that they can prosper, there are opportunities. And so that's why I included the headline in this. Whoops, I'm a slide or two behind, slide behind. So the Italian in me just gets talking and loses track. That's why I included this headline, because I think it speaks so well to your vision and your commitment to the business community about what you can do locally and what you can do immediately. And so I think we need to try to seize upon those types of opportunities to indeed move forward. And I'm grateful to City Manager Angeli for offering that type of insight to other communities. When I read what you did here, Ontonagon is looking to do something similar, and so he was kind enough to offer his insights here. I think as importantly, or I would dare say maybe more importantly though, it's really, what do we want the future to look like, and looking at the longer term. And so I included, I think, some headlines that you're all seeing that speaks to that opportunity. And so the first is to the point that Amy made, is we are really well suited by virtue of how spacious we are and what we have to enjoy to become a destination place. And that not only includes tourism as we've been accustomed to, but really the new workplace. And that fits right into what you're hearing from those big tech companies in the Silicon Valley. And, you know, Twitter and Facebook are now telling their workforce, you don't need to come into the office. So this crisis is transforming the face of what that economy will look like. And so the daily press in Escanaba, when this crisis was a couple weeks old, talked to two young folks who came from the Delta County area who relocated, one to Seattle and I think one to New York. And they talked about what that challenge looked like through Urban Eyes. And although we certainly don't look at it objectively because it's the area that we love and that is so special, boy, why are you going to want to pay Silicon Valley rent and all the challenges that come with a commute or what that workspace looks like? And if you can work from anywhere, as Amy points out, we've proven you can do it here. Granted, we have some challenges with broadband that we still need to figure. I think Northern is part of that with what they're doing on EAN, the Educational Access Network. If you didn't know, on May 1st, the commercial restrictions that the FCC had placed upon them no longer exist. So that that contingency or that condition has expired. So although it's still going to be a challenge for us to get maybe Verizon interested or to get AT&T interested, we'll see what the feds do. But you've got Peninsula Fiber, you've got the EAN, you've got some local partners here. What can we do to seize upon the opportunity that you have in Marquette to make it more broad and more regional? And then the last headline I included there talks to that opportunity as well, and is biomanufacturing. You know, as you're talking about the marketplace that is such a hit there, what can we do on the agriculture side? Or is you're looking to maybe reshore some things? What can we do with mass timber, particularly with Michigan Tech in our backyard and what is the MIFB Institute that studies the new uses of fiber? And how do we drive that? As I've spoken to some groups before, it just, it frustrates me that Grand Rapids has a boxed water manufacturing facility. But, you know, we certainly have some logistics challenges. The Upper Peninsula is really well suited for something like that with the abundance of water that we have, with the abundance of natural resource that we had. So I think those are the types of conversations that collectively we need to have to talk about how do we take advantage of this to really drive a new economy for us. And I think we have some strategic assets that we have that other areas, particularly other rural areas, don't have. And that's certainly first and foremost a resilient people that have been tested and challenged before. And I think it gets, Amy stole my line, and it's really that SISU mentality. And so I hearken back to our good friend John Keevala to say that we need to make SISU really part of the brand of what we're doing, and that's that rugged determination to move forward. We collaborate, I think, better than most other areas. We saw that in a number of ways, including Michigan Tech standing up a COVID lab where a number of different institutions came together to get that lab from idea to implementation within 30 days. It was incredible collaboration to stand up what's a critical piece of what allows us, I think, to have a little more confidence regarding what that infection looks like up here. We have the natural resources. You, with your vision in Marquette, have shown the way and what you're doing and how important that is to so many generations right now. Additionally, we are really uniquely situated with our universities, and to have 3 universities in an area with 300,000 people is such a unique asset. And I think we have to do a better job. And the universities, it's been my challenge to them. They all sit as part of Invest UP. So I think we're in a pretty good spot to lead that conversation. But we need to use that thought leadership and the incredible resources that they are, and such an important asset to our economies as well. And then additionally, I think something that we don't always appreciate because it's just part of our fabric, but we have really receptive state legislative partners, and it crosses political boundaries. I worked in the legislature for 15 years on a staff level before taking this position, and I can tell you that it's genuine how well your state legislative partners work together. And I think as part of this, what I would challenge us to do as well is, what policy changes can we make? You're not going to be able to effectuate a policy change that is going to have a cost to it, likely, but there are other policy changes that we can make. In fact, we've had 2 conversations with committee chairs already that talk about some policy change that would be important to the Upper Peninsula, that wouldn't cost a penny, but provide some business relief. And there is an appetite right now in Lansing for that type of change, because the appropriation challenge is so great, but there are other ways that we may be able to effectuate change. And I just think it takes that concerted effort on our part to say, why couldn't you make this policy change to get that obstacle out of the way, or to make this a more friendly opportunity? So I think that's a challenge for all of us as well. So lastly, I'd say the one thing I do want to touch on that we are continuing to try to put together is a piece that I think is probably most important from our perspective. If we could figure a way to pull it together, it's bold and it's difficult, and it requires a great degree of subject matter expertise. But Northern really is leading the way on a local level as it tries to provide for safe conditions for its students, faculty, and your community in terms of what it's talking about doing with testing, tracing, and monitoring. And Dr. Carrie Schuling and Dr. Paul Mann are just doing great things for your community in that regard. But it really begs the question, why can't we do something broader than that on a regional level? And I think from our perspective, it provides the intersection between public health and economic health. And so if we could figure a way to have a robust testing, monitoring, and tracing program, it addresses the very concern that you have raised minutes ago. And ironically, I think there are some potential funding resources that are available for this. And so we've been exploring it. Amy's been a good part of that conversation to talk about how much instrumentation you need, where would it be placed? If you had the instrumentation, are there the necessary supplies? How would you defray those costs? And so it's something we continue to look at to say, is this something that's practical and doable? Because I think it answers the question that Rebecca had in her slide deck, and it was talking about how nervous we understandably are about having those from infected areas come up and in to enjoy all that makes the UP someplace special. It drives consumer confidence back, and it gives us some assurance that our hospital systems, which are collaborating so well right now, have the capacity to address what's going on the ground. So that's kind of our big and bold initiative at this point. I'm prayerful we can find a way to push that forward, but we certainly stand at the ready to be a partner and a resource with you. And so if you see other opportunities where we can be that resource, please reach out, because that's really at the end of the day what we're looking to do. And again, we do that largely through relationships. And so we stand at the ready. And with that, I stand at the ready to answer any questions or hear any comments.
Thank you, Marty. Really appreciate your in-depth presentation, the data that you've shared with us on, on the UP regional perspective, and especially the project you just mentioned is very interesting. I think it's important to think about the intersection between the health and the economy, and I appreciate that you're trying to work on that very difficult task, and I think it would help all of our businesses and our economy recover, so thank you. Commissioners, if you have any very specific questions for Marty, go ahead and raise your hand to let me know, and we'll ask those. And then after that, we're going to do a quick round robin and try to keep your general comments about this work session to under a minute. So any specific questions for Marty for his presentation that was just given? Commissioner Schlegel, is that a yes? You're shaking your head no and raising your hand.
Yeah, and I guess it's just more of a general, from the federal side of things, do you see any kind of a timeline, or are things moving so fast that we're not able to kind of put a what's coming next type approach to help us out?
I don't have a sense of that, Paul. My concern is, the first three parts of CARES moved so quickly. And I think you're seeing now politics become a little more difficult. And so I don't have any sense. I've not had a conversation with any of the federal legislators or their staff relative to what that vision might look like. But I do think it's incumbent upon us to stay engaged with them, to let them know how important that is for additional resources and enforce some changes to some of the resources that exist.
One of the things that we kind of encouraged, at least at the last night's meeting, was something on my personal level is our small businesses need to document everything that is happening to them, from a financial standpoint, from, everything that they think is important to them, in order to make sure that when the time comes, if there is some availabilities, that they have all this information at their ready and can supply it, without having to go back and scramble, because we don't want any extra money staying below the bridge that for lack of effort, let's put it that way. So
and to that point, I think, again, that's one of the things, I think the opportunities that we have, because you have great partners in TV6 and WNMU. And so when that second round of PPP went up, both the TV stations and the radios quickly came together to put on public service announcements to say, hey, small business community, there's another round of PPP that's coming available. So if you missed out the first time, please get in immediately so you don't miss out the second time. And so I think it's those types of relationships that we have here that differentiate us from other areas, that if we're intentional in thought, that we can take advantage of those partners and really have a significant strategic advantage.
Thank you.
Other commissioners, questions for Marty? Looking around. I'm not seeing any. I think you've answered all our questions, Marty. You've done an excellent job, and
just to clarify, that presentation from the Federal Reserve tomorrow, 10 o'clock, update906.com if you want to register, and we certainly welcome you to hear what Ron Wirtz has to say.
Excellent. Thank you very much. All right, commissioners. So again, the purpose of this work session was to gain information as to what the city has been working on in relation to COVID-19 response. We heard from our Chief Financial Officer, from our HR Director, from our City Manager. Then we also got kind of our local DDA perspective, and the greater county with LSCP, and then the whole UP with Marty Patante. So again, just gaining knowledge, gaining information to help us make decisions as we move forward. So at this point, obviously in a work session, we're not making any decisions or making any votes, but if anyone has any kind of thoughts after, this good deal of information that we've had a chance to think about, I welcome those thoughts now. Again, please try to keep your comments to around a minute or less, as we have gone a bit longer than we had originally intended. So I will start with Commissioner Frazier. Go ahead.
My thoughts only of downtown Washington, if we're going to do that stuff. You could maybe do it, you could try it like one weekend, do it on weekends only or something like that, or try it like once in June or something like that. Just kind of play with it and see how it goes and just go from there. Right, Gary? There's no sense doing it every day. Maybe one weekend or something, like just see how it goes and we'll go from there. I think that's just an idea.
Thank you, Commissioner Frazier. How about Mayor Pro Tem Hill?
Thank you. Thank you again to all the folks who have put all the time into this. You are working so hard, and I do feel like we have a better sense. I really appreciate that we'll have the opportunity to share your information on our website, and I'll certainly be pushing that out to folks. I do, as I said yesterday, think this is only the beginning of the conversations that we're going to have about coronavirus and adaptations. Often with work sessions, we have a project in front of us and we're discussing a project that has a clear beginning and end. That is not the case with what we're going to be dealing with here. We will certainly have the budget conversations going forward. And in addition to that, I do, from all that I have heard from the medical experts, the public health experts, the people that I know in the biomedical industry from my time in Massachusetts, this is going to go on a lot longer than we want it to, and we are not going to have a return to normal. The old way of life was virus free, and we are not going to be virus free for, unfortunately, in 24 months at least. And so we're going to have to give ourselves, I would like us to have the ability to try out other things. We're going to have different and new ways of having conversations about how we do things, because people are as scrambling and working so hard to keep and maintain. But as Marty said, we have to have a vision for the future and go for what that vision is going to be like. And it's going to include this virus. It's not going to go away. The tourists are already bringing it here. That happened in Houghton County and here in town this weekend. People who had come into town turned out were asymptomatic and had the virus. And so I think we have to be clear that our opportunities are living with the virus and finding what those ways are. And so this is just the beginning of that conversation. And I look forward to talking and working with everyone as we figure that out.
Thank you. Commissioner Davis?
Sure. Well, I would echo Mayor Pro Tem Hill about looking forward to future conversations. Actually feel very fortunate that we are in Marquette community where there's so much cooperation and collaboration. And I really appreciate hearing from all the expertise and the fact that we can bring some of this expertise together to learn more. Thank you so much, everyone, for the information that you provided today.
Excellent, thank you. Commissioner Stonehouse?
Yes, Your Honor, just a couple things. I certainly have some concern about the second wave that everybody is talking about that will be coming. But the more you think about it, and the more you realize everything that we're doing and other places are doing in the state and the feds, we really are, I think, are well prepared for a second wave. We've had the rehearsal. Let's hope it doesn't hit us, but we've placed, I think, a large number of very good things in place. I would ask all the commissioners to bear in mind that the City Commission is a policy board. We make decisions based on data presented. We don't make social change as part of a goal, and our decisions are executed through the professional city manager. Sometimes I think we lose focus on that a little bit. I would also hypothesize that we have two distinct missions that are in front of us at the moment. One is to keep the city supporting its citizens through the CV-19 exercise. And second, to keep the business alive in the city of Marquette, because the two are so intertwined. Two closing little tidbits though. Last night I watched the news and I saw Michelle Butler talking at Van Gogh's. And of course, Michelle owns Van Gogh's, is a great Marquette business lady, a real booster of the community. And you can't think of a better representative of the city. But what she said, I think really bears us all remembering. Quote, "We have to create a new culture, hopefully for a short term, so we can all move on." And that's really what we're going through now. We've got to have that new normal for a short period of time, short as we can make it, and then we move on back to the real world, and we'll get there. Lastly, and Marty really, I think, is the fellow who planted the seed on this one. This really fits into new technology. The whole episode we're going through right now. What occurred, of course, what we're seeing occur is that everybody being forced, many people, to work at home because they can't. And I really, in the new tech, in the big tech, Google, Amazon, Facebook, employees are being sent home and told, don't come back. You don't ever have to come back. And something like 30%, I believe, of all employees that are working at home will never come back to the mothership. because they can work at home. And those are the people that we can attract into the Upper Peninsula. We can attract them here in the Marquette. And we can use their big tech to really build our little tech. And that's an interesting opportunity when you realize that it's all coming from this terrible pandemic we're going through. And thank you for the time.
Thank you. Commissioner Bonzo?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I really appreciate it. I just want to thank you for calling for this work session, city staff, as well as all the other people who took a significant amount of time out of their busy lives to provide us with some guidance and some really important information. There were really three takeaways that I think I wanted to touch on very quickly here. One, I think it's very clear that there's a tremendous demand from local businesses for emergency relief, that many businesses are struggling. You know, regardless of what we think about the validity of any particular data set, there seems to be a very clear consensus, a very clear trend across multiple data sets that there's a tremendous demand for emergency relief. And I do think that while I'm very happy to hear, you know, some of the work that's already being done by other organizations, that the city has to play a role in providing that relief. I know it's not normally the sort of thing that would be the role of local government, but these aren't normal times. And there is as of May 7th, there was a notice of funding opportunity put out, just as one example, from the Economic Development Agency with $1.5 billion in new CARES Act funding, specifically for communities to use to combat the negative impacts of COVID-19. And there's also additional funding that was appropriated by Congress for American Coal Communities grants, which serve a similar role, but combating the loss of jobs from the closure of coal mines or coal power plants, which we are also eligible for. I mean, these grants are made out in the amount of a minimum $100,000, often have no required match or 20% required match. So I would really encourage city staff and my fellow commissioners to look into that opportunity, because I think that, as was pointed out earlier during the DDA presentation and during Mr. Fatanti's presentation as well, the vast majority of businesses that need help right now are not getting it, the help that they need. The last two things real quick, I do agree that we need a recovery plan. I'm glad to see the LSCP is moving forward, working with QPAD and local businesses and local governments on that. And I also want to echo the sentiment that was expressed by Mayor Pro Tem Hill and I think Commissioner Davis as well, that, you know, I hope this isn't our last conversation. I do look forward to future conversations specifically about our response to COVID-19 and how we handle it. And I do hope that we have future work sessions on this topic as new data and opportunities become available. I would just conclude by saying that I think there's brighter days ahead, but only if we start planning and taking action now. I think it's very clear at this point that we will not be able to go back to normal, to go back to exactly the way things were before COVID-19. And because we cannot realistically expect to go back, we need to think about how we move forward. And I think all of our future conversations need to be rooted in that reality. Mr. Fatani mentioned my mentor, John Kivala, his personal motto, Sisu. And I think we all need to show that sense of solidarity, rugged determination in the coming months and years.
Thank you. Commissioner Schlegel?
Thank you, Mayor. I'd like to thank everybody that presented tonight. You guys did a great job. That was a lot of work. A couple takeaways. I mean, this is a learning experience. Nobody thought we'd ever be into something like this, but I'll tell you, we're going to come out of it way better than going into it. We need to take a very, this is a transforming moment for us all. And I think that if we take a step back at times, that we take a very pragmatic approach to what we're doing, it's going to give us a better end result, and we'll be better off. We probably will have much less changes or alterations or amendments to that. The teamwork from the local administrations here to the state elected officials is without question a highlight. Thank you, Marty, for bringing that up. And it's just it's UP power, UP proud, just something that we got to hang our hat on. And this whole working from home component, I know several people over the years that have now found Marquette and are moving from. My brother-in-law is trying to get here from Minneapolis because he's a Microsoft guy, and he can't do it because, you know, there's little things like our technology, but we're getting there. And I just see this. I see this being the beginning of a very fruitful transition that's going to allow us to recruit a lot of great minds. We've already got the people here that we need to make these things happen, but maybe this is just a little bit of a little bit more incentive, a little bit more, light a fire under everybody's ass and get them moving a little bit more. So, but thank you for everything tonight on the presentation. Nice job, Mayor, on running the show. Thank you. You're on mute.
Thank you, Commissioner Schlegel. I didn't realize that. Thank you to all of our presenters for your excellent job tonight, to city staff, to Becky Salmon with the DDA, Amy Klickner with LSCP, Marty Patante with InvestUP. Really appreciate you coming to help us understand what each of you are working on, the priorities and the challenges that you've got going on. Helps us have a better picture of our community and our greater region. So thank you very much for that. I do think the conversation will continue in one way, shape, or form, but I think we're figuring it out as we go here. So we'll see what's next. But for now, I think that we have a good baseline amount of information that we didn't have a few hours ago. So much appreciated. At this point, I think we'll be moving on to the public comment section of the meeting, and then we'll go ahead and adjourn. Just wanted to check and see if there was any public comment. We don't have anyone on Zoom for public comment. So at this point, I am going to adjourn the meeting. Let's see what time it is. It's 7:51 p.m., so we are adjourned. Thank you.